It's Saturday in Tryon, North Carolina, and I started thinking tonight about how one little section of scripture can have so many different lessons in it. It's the reason the Bible never gets old, and the reason why so many different pastors preach so many different messages from the same passage of scripture. A good example is last week's lesson in the Southern Baptist material that is called the Lifeway Adult Book, Explore the Bible. In Explore the Bible last week, the lesson was from 1 Samuel chapter 1, beginning at basically verse 1 and going through verse 28. Now, that's only 28 verses. Actually, I could have said from verse 8 to 28, and that would only be 20 verses. But nevertheless, the lesson title was Answered Prayer. And it absolutely is. Hannah prayed for a child, and God gave her a child. And it certainly was answered prayer. However, take the same exact story, and in case you're not familiar with it, we have a man named Elkanah who is married to two women. That should be a problem by itself. But anyway, he's married to two women. One is Hophni, and the other one is Hannah. Hophni has been able to bear him children, particularly has been able to bear him male children. Hannah hasn't been able to bear any children. Now you understand that the pressures of that day's culture was that a woman wasn't a woman unless she had a male child. She was a disgrace to her husband unless she had a male child. So here we have this lesson that has been titled Answered Prayer, but in this lesson, in the same text, are about, 8 different lessons. 8 different messages that you could take from the same passage of scripture, all scripturally correct. The first one, of course, is the answer to prayer. The second one would be the peer pressure that Hannah felt. And when we think about that, the peer pressure came from Hophni, who kind of really rubbed it in her face that she had no children, particularly no male children. The society pressure. And so we have an easy lesson there. The second one is self-esteem. Hannah thought that her self-esteem, her self-worth was dependent upon her having a male child. We know that's not the case. If a woman can't bear a male child, that has nothing to do with her self-esteem and her net worth. Why, absolutely not. The third lesson is found in the judgment of Eli. He was the priest of the day, and he was watching Hannah pray, but he saw her lips moving and no sound coming out, and he thought she was drunk. Well, that's judgmental, isn't it? Just by an appearance. It'd be like seeing somebody with MS or something walking down the street stumbling and thinking that they were stumbling drunk. And so we see this judgmental attitude of Eli. And then we have Eli counseling with her when he finds out she was actually praying. He comforts her, and we see the value of comfort and compassion in counseling. So we're already up to 4 or 5 lessons. And then we find the demand of Hannah to God. Hannah basically said, God, give me a male child. I mean, what kind of prayer is that to God? Compare that with the prayer that Mary had when she found out she was going to have a child. She didn't like it particularly. She didn't understand it particularly, but she said, nevertheless, thy will be done. What if Hannah had prayed, I don't have a male child, but Lord, whatever you want is fine with me. If you care to keep me barren for the rest of my life, that's fine. I'm just going to praise you anyway. So we have another lesson. We have the lesson of Hannah's demand of God for a child. But we also have Hannah promising God that her son will be dedicated to him for as long as he lives. Well, we all know lots of times when you're in a foxhole and bombs are bursting all around, you make promises to God you don't keep. But in this case, Hannah kept her promise. When she did bear her son, she did dedicate him to the Lord. And so we see the importance of keeping vows. Are you keeping up with all of these lessons that are in this one little section of scripture? And then we have the insensitive Elkanah, the husband. Elkanah, when he's dealing with Hannah about not having a male child, he, in his own wonderful way, says, am I not better than 10 sons? Well, we could talk about pride and we can talk about insensitivity and dealing with a wife, but there's certainly a couple of more lessons there. And then we have the favoritism of Elkanah. We find that because he seems to be more in love with Hannah than he is Hophni, or either that or he feels more sorry for Hannah, he gives her a double portion every time they go up to the temple. And so we see this disproportionate or prejudicial and favoritism being shown. So we have all of these wonderful lessons that you could teach from one section of Scripture. Again, if you started at verse 8, which is where Elkanah says to Hannah, am I not better than 10 sons? And went through verse 28, we would have all of these lessons, all of these wonderful lessons that can be taught that are absolutely scriptural, they're absolutely true, and absolutely applicable to our lives today. Is it any wonder that so many times we can look at a passage of Scripture that we've read a dozen times before, and yet God speaks to us in a new and wonderful way? He is a mighty God, and His Word is fabulous because it teaches so many things that we need to apply to our lives. That's your thought for the day. Don't forget tomorrow's church. You need to be in your place. Don't forsake the assembling of yourself in church. God bless you. Your thought for the day. Good night.